Hello, Raina Leon. I am answering some questions about Canticle of Idols, which is my first book. So one of the questions was, it seems like you and your family are very religious. Was it difficult to write poems about sex, knowing your family would see it? It's a great question. So the way I grew up, my father comes from a very devout Catholic family. My mother grew up in a very devout Baptist family, practically living in the church. Every day they were in a church. So they meet and get married and have kids and then have to decide, so how are we going to raise our kids? And my grandmother, again the devout Catholic, had a lot to say on that. And so eventually my mother converted to Catholicism and I was baptized. But in our household, we had a Catholic Bible, a Protestant Bible. I think it was a New American Bible. Actually, several different. There was a King James as well. There were a number of different Bibles in my house. There's a copy of the English Torah. There was a Quran and a number of different religious texts. My parents were always interested in religion and spirituality. And in the 1970s or so, my dad identified as a member of the Nation of Islam, or deeply connected with Nation of Islam, and then deeply connected with the Muslim community. And for many, many years, and actually my whole life, kept a number of dietary restrictions. Like, for example, I don't eat pork. I'm not Muslim. This is not a restriction that Catholics have, but and for Puerto Ricans, like Puerto Rican, everything is pork. But there are a lot of things that, as far as influences from other religious backgrounds, that also impacted how I was raised, and things that persist in my life. In that case, it's something that my father deeply believes in, as far as the impurity of pork. And so it's one of the few things that I continue to honor because it matters to him. Um, so knowing that my family has a lot of religious ties and connection to communities. One of my aunts is a reverend. Like, my grandmother was deeply invested in her Catholic church. My one uncle is a deacon. Like, lots of folk. Thinking about writing about sex, right? Knowing my family would see it. So I am of the opinion that you have to write what you write. And I also am of the belief that God gave us bodies, and not wanting us to be ashamed of our bodies, not wanting us to be ashamed of the gift that we have received, and that our bodies are vessels for the divine, that even within Genesis we are reminded that we are reflections of God. And to think of sex, and so when I think of your question, this question, I think of that there is a separation, that there is a shame in the body in comparison to the spirit, and I don't feel that way, and I that's not how I grew up, as far as like thinking about the body as a site that should not be shamed, but it's definitely something that I grew into. Um, so my family can read my poems about sex and the body and the challenges of the body, um, and particularly around others and their viewpoints around the body, the person. But I don't feel the need to justify what I do, as if to seek or to seek forgiveness for talking about the body with those who are coming from a particular religious tradition or spiritual tradition. I don't have that concern. So and my family still loves and appreciates me. I hope that answers your question.